and he's a misogynist. You know, the film deals with misogyny. Film is peppered with that sort of everyday misogyny.
Oh, good for you!
Nerdrotic.com.
There's so much going on here besides the fantabulous flop that was Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, or the Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of ticket buyers. Now, we have the usual Access Media spin right here from Digital Spy saying Birds of Prey technically wasn't a flop, and we will get into that. But it looks like Marvel and the MCU is feeling a little left out, so they want to get into this game as well. And that's what has been so entertaining about what's going on in entertainment right now, and it's not intentional. Again, the entertainment industry on both sides of the pond has had a very rough couple of weeks with Birds of Prey, Doctor Who, and the Oscars. And after a weekend where we have the best example of positive fan interaction directly leading to a hit film with Sonic, we still have Hollywood shooting off their mouths and shooting themselves in the foot. And ultimately, it always comes down to fan blaming. But before I get started, if you like what I do here and you enjoy independent content, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. That is the only way independent content creators like yours truly and your favorite YouTuber can stay competitive against the CNNs, the BBCs, the ABCs, the CBSs, the NBCs, the CNBCs, and the MSNBCs. That is the entire alphabet we're competing against. So we need you now more than ever, and I thank you for your continued support. One more thing, we all need to take a moment and acknowledge that Natalie Portman is wearing $25,000 dresses for our sins. Her stunning bravery with her sacrifice cannot be understated. She brought awareness to women who were being snubbed by the Academy Awards. These are awards for people who pretend. And these women she was representing are directors, people who help other people pretend. It's not important that nobody would have noticed these names unless it was brought to our attention. It's also rude to bring up that Natalie owns her own production company and could have hired some of these female directors. In her infinite wisdom and enlightenment, she obviously made the right decision to wear a dress to bring attention to these people who help other people pretend. Now, Natalie Portman might not have made this dress or even paid for it, but she still wore it. And that was brave.
Inspired by the brave Natalie Portman and her embroidered Oscars dress. I ain't got a dress. So I've written it on my body. All the known Hollywood who haven't been caught yet. He's a groper, but he paid him off. He'll stick it anywhere. This is a complete nonce.
Let's go down memory lane and recap 2019's fake woke superficial marketing's greatest hits. We have Dark Phoenix's foreshadowing of what's to come in the MCU when they do eventually get the X people.
The women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
Funny that people call it the X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in that X-Men group, so I think it's outdated.
I love it. Okay, all right.
Then we had Tim Miller state that Terminator Dark Fate would scare the F out of misogynists.
I'm sure we could write a book on why it didn't work, although I'm still not sure and I'm processing.
After his film failed at the box office, he had a coming to Jesus moment.
It's just bad luck or bad timing or hubris on my part by thinking that I've got my finger on the pulse of fans, nerds everywhere, and maybe I don't.
Now, there's two ways you can interpret that. Either Tim Miller found some humility and has learned his lesson, or that he is disappointed that fandom is not as enlightened as he is. Speaking of enlightenment, we had Elizabeth Banks blaming men and sexism for the failure of her film Charlie's Angels before it even came out. Another honorable mention is Watchmen, which was as woke as it promised it would be, and it was so successful it won't be getting a second season. Then there's Batwoman, which was as woke as promised and set superhero shows back 20 years along with everything else at the CW, and Ruby Rose uttering the now infamous,
It will be when it fits a woman.
No! No!
The Rotten Tomatoes scores have been rock bottom and the ratings have been continually dropping, but it didn't stop it from getting another season. This brings us to the last week where we saw Doctor Who briefly hit 0% on the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Of course, I did a video on that. You could check it out right here. The ratings continually sink with this show, yet it's going to get another season. I certainly am curious to see how Batwoman Season 2 and Doctor Who Season 13 turn out. I'm guessing we're not going to get much after that. Then the Oscars hit record lows. They were, as expected, woke and cringe, and that was preceded by the Amber Turd situation with Johnny Depp. Hashtag justice for Johnny. I won't go into it. I'm sure you all heard the recordings. Remember, these are the professional pretenders telling us how to run our lives. Now we get back to the Birds of Prey, which is now called Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. If this wasn't a flop, Digital Spy, why did they have to change the name?
And he's a misogynist. You know, the film deals with misogyny in a very extreme way. You know, I call her silly little girl, and the film is peppered with that sort of everyday misogyny.
Oh, good for you!
This Digital Spy article makes every excuse in the book, but it doesn't really break down why Birds of Prey failed, and it's easy. The fake woke superficial marketing, the look, and the name. If Harley Quinn looked like this, they would have made more money. If it was called Harley Quinn, they would have made more money. If Ewan McGregor would have kept his mouth shut, they would have made more money. But more importantly, if they made the film fun, they would have made more money as well. It ended up being boring and really not that woke, but they don't do themselves any favors by popping off before the movie or the show comes out. And now Marvel has done it as well. Now, I'm guessing there is a lot of people in Hollywood who have learned the lessons of Dark Fate, Dark Phoenix, Charlie's Angels, Doctor Who, Birds of Prey, Wokeman, and Batwoman. And some people don't. And this brings us to Dana Schwartz from Bounding into Comics. Marvel Studios She-Hulk writer Dana Schwartz, it seems impossible to overstate the cultural damage done by South Park. While Dana has every right to her horrible take about South Park, we won't be arguing that here. But within her criticism of South Park, she takes it a bit too far and risks alienating most of her audience for She-Hulk. Again, while I disagree with her arguments, they seemed well-reasoned until she blames the fans. To be clear, I don't blame the show itself as much as I do the generation of boys who internalized it into their personalities, which maybe isn't the show's fault. Some of the worst men I've ever encountered are nerds who didn't get girls when they were younger, then became successful and now see them as commodities they're entitled to.
I love it. Okay. All right.
I admire candor and I believe in free speech, but I also believe in good customer service, which is something the repurposers and the creatives in Hollywood and the BBC have recently forgotten. Now, there used to be consequences for making broad generalizations, insulting your fan base or any potential customers who might potentially subscribe to, say, Disney Plus. I wonder if I would suffer any consequences if I worked for Disney and I made a broad generalized statement like, some of the worst people I've met are entitled little daddy's girls who have had a free ride their entire life, daddy paid for university, and somehow worked out a narrative in their head that they're victims while using other people's suffering to gain attention for themselves on Twitter. Then we get this little nugget of wisdom from the writer of She-Hulk on Disney Plus. You know what? Screw it. No more novels by white men in high schools for the next 20 years. I support her right to say this. I don't agree with it. I wouldn't want her setting any curriculum for any high school anytime soon, but it gives us some insight as to how she is going to approach She-Hulk. I'm guessing she's not the biggest fan of John Byrne's run of the series, which was the most memorable. It was breaking the fourth wall prior to Deadpool, and it was highly sexualized, so it won't be on Disney Plus. Again, you have every right to your horrible takes, but when your film or TV show completely fails, do not go out in the public and wonder why or blame it on the fans. This brings us to a Screen Rant article that pointed out that there were over 10,000 tweets with the hashtag reasons to support BOP. Well, the first problem with this is that's not the film's name anymore, and the second problem is within just the first 4 tweets that I found. Reasons to support Bop, or Flop. It's a film directed by an Asian woman, written by an Asian woman, with an Asian cinematographer, starring all women, 1 black, 1 Latina, 1 Asian, with multiple queer characters. There you go, Birds of Prey. In turn, it is a flop that is directed by an Asian woman, written by an Asian woman, with an Asian cinematographer, starring all women, 1 black, 1 Latina, 1 Asian, with multiple queer characters. There you go, Mikey. Badass women in a flop. Harley's preference being confirmed, which was confirmed in passing in the credits. It has a hyena that likes to eat evil men who do evil things that I won't name here on YouTube. What else do you need? Well, unfortunately, I need a good story, which wasn't brought up in any of those tweets. WB allowed for Margot Robbie to choose the next direction for her version of Harley Quinn and presented fans with a satisfying experience.
I love it. Okay. All right.
And there's the hashtag itself, reasons to support Birds of Prey, not reasons I enjoyed Birds of Prey or reasons to watch Birds of Prey. When Hollywood and the BBC go to cause marketing, it is a giant red flag that their film is usually a dumpster fire. This brings us to the Sonic conundrum, something the BBC and Hollywood are going to have to deal with because Jeff Fowler stepped out of line and listened to the fans. This question is for the entertainment industry, and again, I'm talking specifically about promotion prior to a TV show or a film coming out. Would the fan rather hear about a rich person complaining about how hard life is, or would they rather hear that a creative is trying to honor the character and mythology they have loved for decades to the best of his or her ability? Sonic the Hedgehog had the best opening weekend for a video game film in history because Jeff Fowler listened. Just think how different things would be if Doctor Who, Star Trek, and Star Wars had done the same. But this brings me briefly to a BBC article that I'm going to do an entire video on right after this one. But I want to go to a couple of paragraphs. The headline is, From Sonic the Hedgehog to Star Wars, Are Fans Too Entitled? And wrapped in a multi-paragraph study of fandom rehashing old arguments that I've gone over in multiple videos, we get the usual fan blaming. In the spring of 2019, director Jeff Fowler did the unthinkable. He announced that the titular character of the new film, the live-action adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog, would be totally redesigned in the wake of fan backlash to its debut trailer. Thank you for the support and the criticism, he tweeted. The message is loud and clear. You aren't happy with the design and you want changes. It's going to happen. And it did. And now we see the results, and we see these results compared to Birds of Prey's results and Doctor Who's results. And with the Oscars, we see them crashing as well, along with all of the failures of 2019. Do you think Hollywood will get the message now, or do you think they'll just see Jeff Fowler's move as giving in to entitled fans? Racism and misogyny in fandom isn't a new phenomenon, explained Susan Scott. Who's Susan Scott? The author of Fake Geek Girls, the study of gender politics in fandom. I'm sure that's a very neutral source. It's just being felt more acutely in recent decades, in part because of the ease of which these attacks can be orchestrated on social media platforms. Criticisms are now organized political attacks. Do you believe this stuff? So we start this article with Sonic, and it devolves into talking about isms. Can you see the access media and the mainstream media changing their ways anytime soon and learning from the lessons of Sonic? Hell no, and that's the reason they are losing. This is why Hollywood is losing. This is why the BBC is losing. So much so, Save the BBC was trending on Twitter a couple of days ago. That can't be a good sign. So I'm looking forward to the article from Vox stating that Sonic the Hedgehog is an alt-right film. I'm sure that's right around the corner, but in all seriousness, this is the access media that did build the Alita is an alt-right film narrative, so I wouldn't be surprised at all. And we already have one article insinuating Jeff Fowler did something wrong by listening to the fandom. He bent the knee, he capitulated to the entitled fan. We cannot have that. So, Since we already have one stupid article written, that will be my next video. In the meantime, everybody have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what you heard. If you didn't like what you heard, I appreciate you listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.